IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy by the Takshashila Institution. Today's host, I am Jaison, a Program Development Manager at Takshashila. Now, today's is a very important episode, and I say this because one of the achievements of mine from 2023 is that I finally completed a book. And this book is titled Don't Forget 2004, Advertising Secrets of an Impossible Election Victory by Jayshree Sundar. And I have the author with me on today's podcast. Just to preface this conversation, let me take you back, say, about 20 years ago, right? Specifically to December 2003. This is when the Congress Party took very heavy drubbing in, I would imagine, 3 state elections. And it was also known to the populace back then that the India Shining slogan of the NDA government was really gaining a lot of momentum. And this actually led the ruling party to prepone the general elections by 8 months. So cut to chase, in about May 2004, what was witnessed was a very spectacular victory by the Congress party, like against all odds, right? And those who grew up in those years would definitely relate to this particular conversation more so than maybe folks who are born a little after the 2000. But a very interesting book that captures actually the inside story of the marketing and advertising campaign, which helped in the Congress's political strategy, right, and ensured that they came back to power after a 9-year hiatus. So let me just give you a little brief about Jayshree before I introduce you to her. I know I'm very excited to have this conversation. So Jayshree is an advertising and marketing guru, if I can call you that, Jayshree. So she's been known for her work with clients like Cadbury, Maruti Suzuki, Gillette, Parker, Xerox, among many others. And during the period when she oversaw the agency pitch that won the rights to execute this campaign for the Congress party, she was the president of the North region of Leo Burnett. And she was a head there for about 5 years. Jayshree is also a gold medalist from the University of Mumbai, and she holds an MBA from the Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies. And currently, she teaches marketing courses at business schools all over India. And why wouldn't you want to be a fly on the wall in those classrooms? Jayshree, it is my pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Carl. It's my honor to be here with you and all your listeners. And I'm looking forward to our session today.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, for me, the biggest achievement from 2023 has been to finally finish reading a book. And it's also because of the narrative style that you brought in.
I'm quite amused by that. You know, I had somebody else, another journalist, who interviewed me 3-4 days ago. And he said the same thing that you said, that it's the only book he finished in 2023. He says, I pick up a lot of books and I can't go beyond 50 pages. But this one, I had to just finish. So I'm hearing it twice in the last 4 days.
That's wonderful to hear. And I mean, I'm sure, like many of us, we follow politics very closely, given that it's so important to like what we do as far as public policy is concerned. But also, like I am from sort of the marketing side of things as far as my job is concerned. So that's what made this very interesting, for me personally. So
okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, let me just start off by, telling our listeners a little bit about, what went into creating this pitch, right, for the Congress party. And there were about 7, agencies that were vying for this particular project. And, during those days, there was quite a lot of noise and, mayhem around the India Shining campaign, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast. And so what you typically saw was a lot of newspapers, television content that tended to amplify this, right? To amplify the story of India shining, and to kind of take the momentum of India's or take the momentum of the ruling party's story forward. And it was in this context, right, that Jayshree and her team had essentially come up with this creative pitch. So, Jayshree, my question really, while reading the book was that, we often fall prey to, the information that we consume around us, right? So, you hear news, there's confirmation bias. You really have very few tools by which you can actually validate whether this is the case. So, how did you manage to cut out this noise and actually work out a comm strategy that wasn't really influenced by these narratives, right? And when we look back today, it's kind of like a masterstroke. So, what was the decision-making process, at least in your head, during those days?
Yeah, so let's start at the very beginning. So it was exactly around 20 years ago that I got this call saying that the Congress party called for a pitch. And India Shining had already been running for around 3 months. It was coming from one of the government departments, and then it was the ruling party's narrative based on what they were calling a feel-good factor in the country, that all the financial parameters were really good. The stock market had reached a unprecedented high. All the parameters were looking good. There was peace with the neighbors. There were, internationally, people were taking note of India and things like that. And they called it overall a feel-good factor. And they translated this into a creative of India Shining, which had full-page ads, 1-minute commercials, all very happy faces, ladies, women, families with, a dog and kids, and all happy images, happy, everything, feel-good factor. And you are right. With that kind of media pressure, with those kind of budgets that were, hammering away at the consumer, you get drowned in it. And after some time, what you keep seeing, you start believing. And living in Delhi, you're really at the center of it all. And elections have been preponed, and here's a party out of power which has lost 3 out of 4 of the state assemblies elections in December. January early they call elections, which are going to be starting in April. And there's no agency, there's no communication strategy, there's nothing. And they said you have to come back in a week with your presentation. Actually, 9 days. And being an 8 agency pitch, actually not 7, it was very competitive, because you had to go and do something very different. And of course, the first thing that you sit around in an agency when you do your first cut strategy meeting, which is idea generation, brainstorming, the basics, is that the first thing you reach out for is secondary data. Today, it's very easy. You just click Google and it comes. Those days, it was clipping services. So, you had to ask the right answers, questions, and you would get newspaper clips, heaps of them, and then you had to read it. So secondary data is something that we were plowing through, about 5-6 of us just reading up, and lots of interesting things were getting thrown up, which you don't as a regular person, consumer of news and all that, you're not looking into it. So secondary data was throwing up stuff. Things were coming up about, people not, grains rotting in the FCI go-downs, people not getting to eat a meal, a lot of India not getting to eat one single meal in a day. Employment exchange was groaning with, 43 million people registered, jobless, though there were promises of 1 crore jobs. So like that, few things we were picking up, that there were no initiatives for women, nothing much. A lot of middle-class people had lost their lifetime savings in the US 64, problem, Indira Vikas Patra. Those were the big things in which people had lost money. So when you sit to think, actually, the basic or the heart of any marketing strategy or any advertising strategy is the positioning. You get that wrong, everything goes wrong from there. You get that right, everything goes right. And so we were very clear that we have to get the positioning right. And how do the basic way to look for a positioning is you have to look for a gap in the market or in their strategy. Where are the pain points? What is the consumer? Is there any consumer at all that is not affected by this? And one of the things that we came to quickly was that urban India had sort of, the chattering classes had bought into India Shining, the ones who don't go out to vote. But we asked ourselves, we formulated a hypothesis and we said, could there be a middle class or a lower middle class or a poor consumer who has been untouched by this campaign? And for that, I was very clear. I said, I'm not going to sit in a air-conditioned office, and that time it was cold, so heated office with 20 people and decide the fate of India. I said, we have to go out and talk to the consumer. So the basic hub of the strategy was formulating a hypothesis in office, but getting it checked out with the consumer. And we said, forget urban India. Let's go into semi-urban, rural, and absolutely the lowest end villages. I mean, we went out to 7-8 places. It was a very short time. We had 8-9 days, if you remember. So I sent out many teams. And what came back was a shockingly different narrative from the one that was being created in mass media, which is a manufacturer statement. Yeah, it's like me. If I have a company and I say I have the best products, my goods will really make you look good or fair, or, it's very healthy. It's just me. It's one-way communication. So it's best to do primary research, not only secondary, and get it checked out with the consumer for who everything is happening. And that is what we did. And that's how we cut the noise out, Carl. That because we were also drowning in the same noise. So we said, let's take it to the horse's mouth. And what came from them was something totally different.
Yeah, you touched upon those very consumer insights that you drew from the market research and interviews. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the logic that you applied in those instances, right, to appeal to those voters. And Jayshree talks a great deal about the 4 target groups that were identified. Namely farmers, middle class, investors, unemployed youth, and also the women, right? And the slogans are quite catchy as well. And as you read the book, you get a sense of some of the aspirations of those target groups that you wanted to bring out through these slogans, right? And if I could name a couple of them, there was Aam Aadmi ko kya mila and Congress ka haath Aam Aadmi ke saath. Were really framed in a very apt way, given that, as you mentioned, right, the India Shining campaign was eventually all bluster in those segments. So when you look back today, can you really share what those consumer insights were that led you to tailor this messaging?
Yeah, I will. So, when we looked at the data of the country, of everyone, we said, okay, let's leave the rich and the urban out. Not that we left them out totally, because some of them, even if they're rich and they're urban, they are your supporters, they are your base, and you cannot ignore them. So we did have an ambush campaign running all through for urban India consumers, but they were not our primary target. How was the target audience setting done? I think you're trying to ask me that. And, if you look at, if there's a feel-good factor, is there anyone for who this feel-good factor is not working? And our hypothesis was that with farmer suicides going so high, particularly in certain states, loan rates were high, they were not able to cope up, and entire families were getting into very bad shape because the chief wage earner, the main farmer, was committing suicide, leaving behind a widow and kids. We said this is a potential group of people for who India is not shining. This was our thought process. Women, 48.5% of India, not one communication to her, not one. They're taken for rallies, where how many women get a ticket? This is what we thought. That nothing is happening for them. They're not even being addressed. So that is one. The jobless youth, because that data was there that people are not getting jobs, and this person who's lost all his lifetime savings, the young, the people like traders, shopkeepers, teachers, people like that who do very sincere work and work really hard and have limited income, and then they invest and then they lose. And so we went, when we did this primary research, which I talked about a little earlier, we just focused on these people. So it wasn't that we were going to all and sundry. We looked for farmers, we looked for women, we looked for unemployed youth. I mean, youth. We didn't know whether it was a random sampling, but lots of people were interviewed on camera so that nobody could say that, we sort of fudged it or something like that. And there was only 3 questions on that questionnaire. Has your life changed in the last 5 years? Have you heard of India Shining? And in Hindi, it was Bharat Uday. So when we went down the strata and we went to places like Maharashtra and Bangalore and Ajmer and Meerut and Delhi and various places, 8, 9 different places in the country. Also, quantitatively, there was a questionnaire that was pan-India. So the first thing the consumer was saying is, India Shining, Bharat Uday, wo kya hai? Like, so many people had never even heard of it. Then, has your life changed in the last 5 years? If so, how? These were the other 2 questions. हाँ, मेरा लाइफ चेंज हो गया है, बदल गया है लास्ट 5 साल में. कैसा बदला है? एकदम बेकार हो गया है. Person upon person was coming on the camera saying this. And when these guys returned from the research, they were given 2 to 3 days, like just fly down, come back. We were watching the raw footage through the night because there was so little time, nobody actually slept. And we said, there seems to be a pile of people, these 4 target audiences, for whom India is not shining. And in fact, it is not shining at all. And they seem to be very worked up and pretty angry. And we said, why don't we talk to these people and tell them that, okay, if you bring the Congress party to power, then these are the things they will do for you. And that is how the target audience setting happened. And throughout the campaign, which ran from March to May, only these 4 audiences were addressed through our communication. So it wasn't that suddenly you're talking to a businessman sitting in Bombay. No. So this is what you have to do, because budgets were very limited, as you can imagine, out of power for 9 years. No money. So you have to, if you have endless budget, you can talk to everybody. But when you have limited budgets and you have to go black and white compared to somebody being full page, when you have to do small 25 by 4 quarter page ads in black and white compared to full page color, then you better have a stark and a very cut through message, and that is what we did. So it was a complete counter to happy faces, full page ads, and a lot of thrill and everything is great, to then putting it out that, okay, and the main thing in any political, any brand campaign is you have to have an emotional connect. You can keep giving rational data as long as it hits my heart. They say mind, heart, muscle. So you have to appeal to the mind and you have to tug the heart, and that's when the action will happen, which is muscle. What is the action we want in a political brand? We want that on the day of voting, they go to vote. That's it. That's one action.
Yeah.
It's not like an FMCG brand or a durable. You keep advertising, okay, end of the month, the housewife didn't go and buy surf. And I'm going on, trying to make her buy. Maybe I have a chance next month again. I'll keep pumping advertising. No. This is that one day in 5 years that comes, one day. And if your consumer doesn't go out to vote for you, then you've lost the whole thing. So the whole action is that you have to have that emotional connect. You have to have, and that's the question we asked, exactly the lines you read out. Aam aadmi ko kya mila? India shining, लेकिन आम आदमी को क्या मिला? That is the connect we wanted to make. Stock market ने नई ऊंचाइयां देखी, लेकिन आम आदमी को क्या मिला? So everything is very high, but like, what did I get? And that's a question that मुझे क्या मिला? That's the question that we wanted to, that every customer who's reading our ads or hearing the radio or seeing the television, whatever campaign we are able to put out in the limited budget, should have this thought that what did I get? And these four parties of the target audience that we had were definitely saying it, that I got nothing. So that is what was the absolute, that was the tipping point. And we said, we think we've on to our, winning strategy here. And when it came to creative, we said, when you talk to the creative teams in an advertising agency, you have to make them understand for who are they writing the ads. When the copywriter actually sits down to write the ad, he has to have a sort of person in his mind.
Correct. Yeah.
So
personas.
And we said just write it for the man who travels by bus.
Yeah.
And who's hanging from the ledge. Bus mein jo aadmi latakta hai. Write it to him. When you think of the ad, you think of the lines, you think of the visuals, write it for the striver, the Indian striver, who has no joy in his life. Day upon day, it's the same day. Get up, go to work, come back, make some money, handle the family, get some food on table, and get the children to do some work and cut your coat very, very carefully with whatever little money you have. And no day looks different. So write it to this person and hopefully shine a light that if all this noise is happening about shining India and you got nothing, then please try and put your weight behind the alternative. So
no, I think lots of takeaways there for anyone who's into brand building, looking at advertising sort of nuggets, from those remarks that Jayshree just made, and plenty more. Like if you dive into the book, so I think this is a good segue to maybe talk about the actual pitch, right? When you were meeting with the Congress party leaders. I think the second round of the pitch had the likes of Sonia Gandhi and other senior leaders. The reaction that you described to me, like in those sections of the book, when they saw these ads, when they saw the Vox Populi presentations, seemed very telling. Did you get a sense that the Congress wasn't expecting a reaction like the ones that you described, of the water, of the semi-urban and rural water? And there's a great line in the book, and I quote, "There's nothing like bringing in the potential consumer to the boardroom." Close quote.
Exactly.
What was? Can you give us a sense of how did the Congress leaders actually react to this, and was that surprising to you?
Actually, the first round of pitch happened on 14th, and it was the core team we were dealing with. So there were about 6-7 of them in that meeting. It was happening in a bungalow in Lodi Road. Right. And we were the last ones to get in. And it was a very cold night and it was freezing. And, I guess they were tired. They'd already heard 7 presentations. And then when we got in there, I had taken a screen and we had taken a big TV because I was like, I'm not going to show this from a laptop. It's not going to have any impact, with 8 people sitting in front. So when we walked in, they said, okay, come on, now, hurry up. And we said, no, you'll have to give us 5 minutes to set up. And they said, what set up? And I said, yeah, we have a screen and we have a big 29-inch television. And they're like, what is all this? So I realized all the other agencies must have pitched from a laptop. They must have, thought that there'll be a conference room from where they'll be able to project on a large screen. But no, this was happening in a bungalow. And I had it pre-checked and I knew that there is no equipment there. So we carried the equipment and I said, please take a 5-minute break because, we just need 5 minutes to set up. So, it was firstly all very strange, this big screen coming up and this TV being set up and whatnot. And we had edited that Vox Pop. There was tons and tons and tons of footage from all over the country. We had edited it in a studio in Delhi very confidentially, so that, because pitches are very competitive. So information leaks out, and we, kept everything very safe with us. And when we build up to the strategy and we said that, this is what they're saying, and of course, there is a lot of feel good factor stuff happening, and this is the campaign they're running. But this is our hypothesis because the secondary data is actually showing something else. And we went out and we interviewed people, and we want to show you. And we put on the thing. And, the consumer, as I wrote, nothing like bringing the consumer, because then it becomes our hunch versus anybody else's. But when it's coming from that real consumer's mouth who's saying, पिछले 5 साल में मेरा तो जिंदगी बेकार हो गया and things like that. Firstly, there was a lot of hope for us when we watched it in the night in the agency, and I could see the same thing happening to them. I almost felt like there was blood running through everyone's vein, watching that film. And when it went off, it was about 5 minutes. Okay, that's a long vox pop, but we kept it on, given that they had only given us 30 minutes. And then they said, can we see it again? And suddenly they were all sitting up, Till then it was, okay, this is my 8th presentation. I'm a bit tired. It's 8 in the night or whatever. And suddenly they sat up, and then they saw it 3 times. And at the end of the 3rd time, they asked, is it real?
Yeah.
And I said, I cracked some joke, which nobody laughed at. And I said, but I told myself and the team, I said, listen, we are not going to get overawed that they're politicians, that we see them on TV, because we know our business, we know communication. That's why they have called us. So be brave, be like how you are with other clients. And I definitely feel there was a change in body language. After that, there was a lot of attention to every slide that followed. And, they had said, just come with a strategy, but we went with the creative because, to people who don't understand, who are not looking into marketing and ads, you're not a Lever or a Procter & Gamble that's doing this daily, and you spend thousands of crores and this, you can imagine what a poster. We said, let's not take chances. Let us translate this Aam Aadmi ko kya mila into the actual creative and take it and show it to them. And so, therefore, it was a full pitch. And yeah, the second round was not the one with Mrs. Gandhi. There were many rounds in between.
Okay.
Because, there would be like Renuka Chaudhary has come, Mukul Vasnik has come. Digvijay Singh has come from Madhya Pradesh. Please show him the campaign. So all the time we would be running to that war room, 99 South Avenue, and showing it, coming back. Then they shortlisted it down from 8 agencies into the last 2, which was us and another one. And that's when the meeting happened at 10 Janpat.
Yeah, no, very, very captivating, and some of the best sections in the book, certainly.
Yeah.
Jayshree, we'll just take a quick break and we'll be back shortly.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
Hello, everyone. We are back talking to Jayshree Sundar, who is the author of the book Don't Forget 2004. Jayshree, you spoke about the pitch to the Congress and eventually winning the pitch to execute their sort of campaign, advertising campaign. Now, something that I've come across, through my interactions with advertising, PR, campaign managers, is that maintaining reputation of the client or the client's brand becomes fairly important, right? And I'm sure that during the 2004 election campaign, there were negative ads that were run against the Congress party. So as a brand agency, what was the reputation of the Congress party, right? An important criteria, given that A, this is a political outfit, and broadly the objective for any party, especially in politics where it's like a zero-sum game, you want to aggressively attack the reputation of your opponents. So at what prompted you to come up with this very civil yet clever counter-narrative campaign, right? Rather than a negative one. And dread to say that today's political messaging is, just gets drowned out in, all the kind of ad hominem attacks and innuendos. So, what was the thinking there? Did you think of the Congress Party as any brand that you want to maintain the reputation of? However, political party makes it slightly different. So,
Yeah, no. I mean, this was a brand that had given India governance for many years and was responsible for a lot of good in the country. And it was totally drowned out by being out of power and by the whole narrative that was there. Also, coupled with this, Prime Minister Vajpayee was at the peak of his popularity, and he was a very loved statesman and politician of this country. So everything was going for them. Now, talking about negative campaign, it's very easy to fall into that trap of anti-incumbency. So this whole thing could have been, oh, you did nothing for the farmers, you did nothing for women, you've done nothing for the youth. And it could have taken that stance. But would it have had the emotional connect? Because people would have read it. But when you turn that whole thing on its head and you talk from the consumer point of view, आम आदमी को क्या मिला? So you club all these people under an umbrella of Aam Aadmi, that is the farmer, the petty investor, the women, and the unemployed youth. And you call them the Aam Aadmi, that is the normal, regular people, the teeming millions. And they are asking, like you are asking on their behalf, what did they get? What did you do for them? So definitely the first phase of the campaign, it began like this. This was very stark, black and white images, real people, real faces, no models, no pretty pictures, and shot in farmlands, shot in villages, shot in a hut, shot in ordinary people. And we said, Aam Aadmi ko kya mila? So it was in a way raising questions. We used to internally call this campaign the raising questions campaign. That is, you challenge the person who set out the narrative and you say, okay, you're saying all this, but here, what do these people get? But after that, we said that if someone has to vote for us, if you just keep it negative, 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 how are they going to get the emotional connect? Also remember that if you're out of power for 9 years, the first time voter who's 18 years old would have been around 9, 10 at that time. They don't know anything, so young. So we said we need a bridge campaign, which we used to call the achievements campaign, which were just 4 ads and ran for around a week or 10 days, which actually placed the visiting card of the Congress party in front of the consumer again, which was, their achievements in technology, because it was in Rajiv Gandhi's time that the whole computer revolution with Sam Pitroda and all happened, Then the industrial revolution, setting up of all the PSUs, of the IITs, the IIMs, all that stuff, or the position of women in the Panchayati Raj, which was done by Rajiv Gandhi. He had brought in a legislation and a lot of women were employed in the Panchayati Raj as a result. We're holding office bearer positions and so on and so forth. So when we placed the achievements in front of the consumer, it was again coming from the point of view of these target audiences and again refreshing public memory that, lots of things have happened in the last 10 years, thanks to the NDA alliance and all. But don't forget that the entire base of India, the grounding right from independence, has been done by the Congress party. So that was placing the visiting card again in front of the consumer. After that, we ran what we called a vision campaign, or what we called the positive campaign, which was, if you vote me back to power, what will I do? So it's not just raising questions or saying, you're so bad, you're so bad, you're so bad, you're so bad, without saying, listen, if I come to power, what will I give you?
What am I going to give?
Yeah. And those ads had the 6 bases of governance, that they're going to take care of farmers, that they're going to uplift women, and, whatever it was, and secularism, so Sadbhavna and or Vikas, and all the things they had sort of stood for. These were the 3 campaigns that, ran. So it wasn't all negative at all.
Sure. there's a world of difference between how, that particular campaign of 2004 was executed to how parties and even brands are putting together their campaign strategies today as we speak. Can you maybe give us some strategies, that you believe works both online and offline, that works in this decade, in the 2020s compared to what had worked out in early 2000s? And if you could also maybe tell us if there are some obvious strategies that brands and parties have ignored and not really paid much attention to.
Actually, so much has changed and so much hasn't. If you look at a political brand, a general election happens every 5 years. So there have been only 3 elections in between, 2004
Correct.
and now. And the fact that, people have to hear what your message is very important. So unlike other brands, I think the on ground activation, the rallies, how active you are in your constituency, how much you and your workers are galvanizing forces at the last booth, at the last mohalla, at the last road of your village, all that is important. Because when you say youth for a brand like, say, a hair gel or something, or a deodorant, you will choose which part of the youth. 25% of India, 50% of India is below 25. That's about 700, 600, 700 million people. You're not going to talk to all of them. So you may say, okay, urban India, okay, metros, okay, these metros, this. But in a political brand, from the richest man to the poorest man is a part of the target audience, anybody 18 plus. So on ground activation does not go out of style. Okay, radio does not go out of style. I often ask, in a political brand, is radio a primary medium or a secondary medium? It's called a blind medium because you can't see it. But for the person working in the field, or for a rural woman who does her work and listens to the radio, and you can keep putting your messaging in there, it becomes a very primary medium. Or painting of a village well, or wall paintings in a village, or the streamers, posters, everything in little shops down the. So it's a whole different ball game over there.
Right.
And coming to the bigger one, like what the media landscape has changed, Carl. I mean, at that time, political ads, if the EC allowed, then you could be on television and you can really get a blanket appeal. But today, who is watching prime time that much? It's very, very, the consumer is very slippery today. I mean, between social media and even YouTubers have massive influence. Many of them have followings going into millions. And I have watched that they have been recruited very smartly by the political parties now. They're giving interviews on those channels. The language they speak is much cooler, younger. And the Rajasthan government, I think, had a tender out, recruiting YouTubers and influencers and social media people and things like that. So let's put it this way: television as we knew it, the mass soap operas and the 9 o'clock news, etc., is diluted. It's not gone. It's still a very, very big medium, but you're not going to find all consumers there. Two is print has got much weaker, and I see it being used much lesser than earlier. Radio will continue to be good. Outdoor will happen, especially down the line. Activation, road shows, rallies, there's absolutely no taking away the importance of that. But as I'm coming to, and the biggest game changer is social media. And I personally think neither of the parties have a good social media solid strategy. Now, of course, you may turn around and tell me, oh, but they're also active on it. Being active, sending 10 messages every day, all different, all disparate, is not a campaign. Like, is there a message like Aam Aadmi ko kya mila happening? Or is there, okay, this one went on a rally, that one was in a helicopter flying somewhere, or Modi ji went to Lakshadweep, so, some pictures of him snorkeling. I mean, where is that concerted? And I feel for parties like the Congress, etc., which will now be coming into the whole thing very late. And there is also that INDIA,
The block.
Conglomerate or whatever group that they formed. What are they going to say? What is their strategy? And social media, fortunately for everyone, is very fast. So to make a TV commercial or a print commercial, get it out, it takes their lead times. But here you can make it literally in hours and have it out. So I think a person with a very cohesive social media strategy, which talks, which does the emotional connect, which includes all social media, including YouTube, using influencers, using your own people, and not being at, crossroads. Someone in Delhi is putting a message, then someone at the district headquarters putting something opposite, and then someone right at the bottom is putting something else. It's very hard to control it, I know. And even they're finding it hard to control, the model code of conduct, though something has come up and they are trying to, regulate it a bit. But you can't. But as a party who's because your consumers, your followers will keep putting messages. But as a party, you can have a solid strategy on social media. So I think I'm going to be interested to see what all the parties are going to do with social media now. Like, I'm just thinking, if we had social media with Aam Aadmi Ko Kya Mila, we could have done so much amazing work around it. So that's what I'm saying. But you need a platform. You need that one emotional connect. And then you go to town with it.
Yeah. No, like very, very well put there. So I'll just move to, the final question that I had, Jayshree, is really, looking forward to the general elections, right, of this year. And I see a lot of very eerily similar, situations and contexts to 2004. Which is that, of course, the Congress has taken a drubbing, as we mentioned earlier in the episode. The BJP seems to be steaming full speed ahead. The Congress has been out of power for nearly 10 years now, right? So that's pretty similar to the state of play, back in 2004 as well. Now, if you were looking to, say, outline a strategy for the Congress, I know it's not possible to do that over the course of a podcast episode. And that's probably maybe another book if you're thinking of writing one. But maybe to ask you very briefly, like, do you think a red ocean or a blue ocean strategy would work better? If you could describe what that means to our listeners, and who would be the key target audiences for the Congress party in the upcoming elections?
So, coincidentally, Prime Minister Modi gave a statement very recently. In fact, I'll give you the exact date. Last week, he said, the four biggest castes for me are the poor, the youth, the women, and the farmers. Can you believe it? 20 years later, it's the same target audience. Only investor has become poor. So it looks like they're going to chase these four target audiences, something that we set out in 2004. See, I mean, I would say, the situation is eerily the same. I would say perhaps a little worse, because at least in 2004, they were ruling in 11 states. Now it's, I think, 2 or 1 or something like that. So there is hope in certain sectors. See, what BJP has going for it is, one man, which is Modi, which is everyone is seeing as a leader. Modi ka guarantee. That is his line, that when I give a guarantee, I guarantee you that it'll happen. That is his narrative now. So it's very clear. There's a clear pitch. He's delivered, and they're going absolutely confident. There doesn't seem to be any anti-incumbency, and every emotional narrative that the other party has tried, which is farmers, women not getting a position, all these wrestlers, whatever, or the migrants, or the vaccine problem. Somehow, it's happening, it gets a bit of traction, and it's dying out. So there is no big emotional story or, problem that they have been able to get and highlight. Everything, even now, today, whenever there was a Supreme Court ruling against Adani, so everything's getting sorted out. It's whatever narrative they are taking up, it doesn't seem to be getting any traction. It's there for some time, it's going off. It's there for some time, it's going off. So now, what are they going to take? What is going to be the big story going ahead? Definitely, I would say south of the Vindhyas, all the 5 southern states, there's hope for them because the BJP has not managed a great show in any of those. Some of the other states like Orissa and all are also there. So let's see. But I think the fact is that the NDA people, they work very hard also. They're constantly working. If they win an election, the next day they're working 18 hours. So it's a very hard opposition to take on. People with deep pockets because they've been in power, people who work very hard, and people who are clear about their narrative. Now, this other narrative that we will build, because Bharat Jodo Yatra was that we will join the country again. Okay, so we are against divisiveness. And there's going to be another one starting mid-Jan. And I hope that they get a lot of traction over there. And while I'm talking all this, I want to make it very clear to all the listeners that I do not belong to any party and I'm not for Congress or for BJP. I'm just talking as a professional. And also that in the country needs a strong counter narrative. So when I say I hope that they'll get some traction, and so that it's not a cakewalk, because in any democracy, you need the opposition to be strong. Correct. So it's in that interest that I'm talking like this. I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure. Yeah. No. So if any of the listeners loves a good underdog story, your archetypical David versus Goliath, grab a copy of Don't Forget 2004. There's plenty more to this very intriguing episode that we've not covered in the podcast, but surely if Jayshree agrees, maybe for a later time. But thank you so much, Jayshree. It was really amazing to talk to you, especially about the book, about the Congress Party's improbable victory back in 2004, and also sharing your insights on what might vote for them, in the coming general elections.
No, it was an absolute pleasure to be here. And I don't know how these 45 minutes went off, or 50 minutes went off so fast. And I'd be more than happy to come back at another time. And for everybody who's listening and you're interested, this is available on Amazon. So you can get it. And it's not an expensive book. And it's a quick read. When I wrote it, I said, you should be able to finish it on a flight. So it may be a little more than a flight, but you'll have a good time reading it if you do.
If you're anybody like me, then I can be rest assured that you will finish reading the book, even if it takes about a year. So,
thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and let's see what happens. This year is going to be interesting. So maybe after the results, we can talk again or something. Let's see.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for listening. Bye.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.